This Reds offseason has not yet set them up for playoff success.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. We are your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr, and we have a combined 14 years of experience covering these Cincinnati Reds in podcast form. We love baseball. We love the Reds, and we have taken our love of the game. We have taken our love of this team, and we have turned it into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. On today's show, we're going to ask the question, have the Reds improved between the end of 2024 and now? We're going to talk about what impact Tito Francona actually has on the most important stat in baseball, and that is wins. And Jeff has a rant when it comes to prospects. And as you know, when Jeff starts to rant, you never know what's going to happen around here. So make sure you stick around for that at the end of today's show that's brought to you by GameTime. Just download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Jeff, here's what we're going to talk about. We are going to take a long, hard look at this team and try to realistically and honestly answer the question, are they better now than they were on the final day of the season in 2024?
And my answer to that, Steve, is they are not good enough. They may have gotten incrementally better. They might have gotten slightly better. And I've even seen some different things. Like I know that former Reds general manager Jim Bowden, writing for The Athletic, said that the Reds have had a B. He gave them a grade of a B for the offseason so far. But he said the key thing, and that is that they are a power-hitting outfielder away from being a division contender. And I agree with him there. The thing is, though, I don't think they get a B for what they've done so far. I think it's a C, maybe even a C minus. And it's because they haven't removed doubt. They have continued to leave the question marks of health of certain players to be the main driving force of how you think this team is going to succeed. And is Matt McLain healthy? Is CES healthy? If the answer is yes, then we're pretty happy. But we don't know that answer just yet. So let's take a look at what the Reds have done, the players that they've gained and the players that they've lost. Because if you add together the wins above replacement as according to Baseball Reference, this is what you get. The Reds have added 5.7 WAR, and they have lost 4.1. So, without looking at all the different names, just looking at the stats, they're slightly better. But I don't think they're good enough for me to sit here and tell you, yes, this roster as currently constructed on January, whatever, this day here in January, they can make the playoffs. I don't feel that way right now.
I think that chart is a starting point, Jeff. It is where we can begin to look at this team and see if it's better. Look, it's 1.6 wins better before we look at any other factors on this team. Factors like Will Benson and his negative WAR should not be playing for this team in 2025. Matt McLain in his WAR that should be at a minimum 3, probably more like 4. That WAR is not factored into this chart. The improvement of some of these other guys that had a down year. Spencer Steer is going to be better than 1.5 WAR in 2025 than he was in 2024. If used correctly and Freychild actually becomes an outfielder for this team, if used correctly, Fraley's WAR is going to be better than 0.3. Fairchild can put up more than a 1 in WAR if he only faces left-handed pitching. These are things that we know can happen. And I think that when we get into the Tito part of this, that's where Tito is going to matter, because I think he will use players more appropriately. He will use players better than David Bell and the committee of deciders, whatever the hell that was, whatever they did. But for me, and I want to bring this all the way back around to where you began with Leather Pants, Jim Bowden saying that this team is an outfield bat away and he gives them a B. I agree. This team is an outfield, by the way. I've been saying it for 3 off seasons now. I also agree. This team, they're better than a C, Jeff. Back in the days where you could use real grades and everybody didn't get a trophy and you were allowed to hand out letter grades in school, a 79 was a C plus and an 80 was a B. If I'm grading this team right now on the offseason that they've had, the improvements that Nick Carr has made, I'm giving them a 79.4, a C plus that's just a tick away from being a B, because 79.5 rounds to an 80 and they would have got a B. Just this close.
Why not a 74, 79.1?
Because it was just this close to rounding. Here's why it's short. They didn't get the outfield yet. But I'll tell you this, I'm very happy with what Nick Carr did with the starting rotation. This starting rotation is very, very stable on paper right now. Looking at what they've got, very, very stable heading into Goodyear. The bullpen, I think I like the moves they made in the bullpen, because I thought that Fernando Cruz was a house of cards ready to come down. I felt like there were moves to be made in this bullpen, and there's still some room to make moves. Graham Ashcraft going to this bullpen makes this bullpen better. I like what's happening out there. So there are things to be positive about. I like the Gavin Lux trade. I like what they did there in getting a Jonathan India that also can play defense. I like that. So there are things to be positive. There are things to be excited about. Are they a playoff team right now as they're built? No. Could they stumble into the playoffs right now as they're built? Maybe. Are they better than a C, not quite a B? Absolutely. So that's how I evaluate where we're at in the offseason. The offseason is not over. There's still room to make moves. Yesterday, we talked about the fact that there's a little bit of money in Nick Carr's pocket right now, and he's walking around maybe looking to make a little bit of a purchase. That would help this team. So they're not failing. They're not quite a B. There's things to be happy about, and there's still work to be done. That's my quick analysis of this team as it sits right now here in January.
And I think for me, that's why I'm a little bit more critical of the job that's been done so far, is that main need has not yet been addressed. And it is still a need. It is going to be a need for years to come if they continue to do nothing, because there's nobody coming up that gives me any amount of confidence that the Reds outfield is going to be better in the future than it is right now. And the Reds outfield currently is betting on a guy who's not an outfielder in Spencer Steer, a guy who is not healthy in TJ Friedel, and a platoon of 2 guys who, quite frankly, you have to manage the matchups in order for it to work. There's a lot of what ifs with that group, and there's not a whole lot of confidence. I feel like as a bat, I have confidence in Spencer Steer, but as a glove, I don't. And so I kind of wish that's what we were talking about more. Can they go get a Taylor Ward? Can they go get even a Randall Grichuk and add to this group? I'll feel a lot better. I'll be more toward the camp of they deserve a B.
I'll tell you, if they got either one of those guys, my grade changes to a B right now. Adding either of those 2 guys, Taylor Ward or Randall Grichuk, I'm saying they're at a B right now. It's not an A because they didn't get the power hitter.
No.
But that would be a solid B for me if you put one of those 2 guys with all the other moves that were made.
If we're putting like a number on it, if let's say they go trade for Taylor Ward right now and the deal is stomachable, I'd give him like an 81 or an 82.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm going past an 85. Like if they surprise us and get Anthony Santander, we can talk. But I don't see that happening for a number of different reasons. I think it's intriguing to me that they had chose to spend so much money on this rotation, and they understand that pitching is a key selling point for any team. And quite frankly, if you can outpitch teams, you can generally beat them. But this team just failed so mightily with the lineup, and for them to just bet, it feels like they are betting on Matt McClain and CES. And if that bet fails, it feels like the playoffs will fail as well. And I don't know that there is a move to take that bet off the table and make it more of a sure thing. Is that bet Terry Francona, or is the sure thing Terry Francona? That is really where my intrigue lies, because how much exactly does he add taking David Bell out of the equation and adding Terry Francona into it? Let's get into that coming up next.
Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to events with GameTime. Just download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off your first purchase. Now, it's not just for baseball folks, although Jeff and I tell you all the time, that's what we use it for. We head down to the banks, we grab some dinner, we grab a drink, and then right before first pitch, we jump on GameTime, we get our tickets, we head over to the ballpark. But you can use it for hockey. You can use it if you might be interested in it. I don't know, watching the Ohio State University Buckeyes win a national championship this coming week. You can use GameTime for that. If you don't know the venue, if you've never been to Atlanta, well, it's going to show you the view from your seat. And with all-in ticket pricing, you're going to know exactly what it is you're going to pay. It's really simple. Just download that GameTime app, create your new account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off that already low purchase. Terms do apply. Again, just create your account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time.
We're talking Reds baseball here today, every day, every week, every month, all year long. Make sure you subscribe to get at least 30 minutes of Reds talk in your feed every single day. And by the way, Steve, I don't even know if Game Time is going to have that great. I think I saw like the cheapest ticket to the national championship was like $1,600.
Yep.
Per
Nosebleed, $1,600.
Like, gosh, maybe Game Time can get you in at like $1,500.
Maybe so.
You might
Either way, you're going to get to watch the Buckeyes win a natty, baby.
Yeah, and then maybe see good old Ryan Day get that lifetime contract extension. All right, speaking of coaches, let's talk about Terry Francona.
Thief of joy. Thief of joy.
Talking about Terry Francona, who's not a thief of joy. He is a bringer of joy, a bringer of smiles, because removing David Bell from the equation and adding Terry Francona, I do believe adds something. And I think this is why my baseline with this team and my expectation right now centers around the 500 mark. I think that there are some questions that we cannot answer right now that could change that and greatly increase that number. But as it stands, with the guys that they have added and with Terry Francona as their manager, I do feel like you can begin to see the higher end performance marks for a lot of players. We always talk about, what is most likely to happen for a player, what is his ceiling, what is his floor. I think that Terry Francona pushes a player closer to their ceiling than he does to their floor.
I agree with that. And I also think that as well as pushing players, he's going to be better at getting guys in positions to be successful without even needing to be pushed. You look at this David Bell led team in 2024, Jeff. CES with a -1 WAR was in 29 games. Okay. Luke Maile with a -0.4 WAR, 53 games. Nick Martini also with a -0.4 WAR, 52 games.
Hey, that's opening day hero, Nick Martini.
And here's where it gets ugly, Jeff. 66 games, 229 at bats, -1.8 in WAR, Noelvi Marte. Terry Francona is not going to run Noelvi Marte out there 66 games with a -1.8 WAR. It's not going to happen. Will Benson, you want to talk about worse? Will Benson, 343 at-bats, -1.4 in WAR in 128 games. 128 games of Will, I can't hit a damn baseball, Benson. That is not going to happen with Tito Francona in this Reds dugout.
That's a -3 win. That's the Bizarro all-star player. The other way. He's
the other way. Yeah.
The negative all-star. Yeah. Between those two guys. I do find this, like, I almost put a number on this, and I think it's hard to do. There's no such thing as like manager war or anything like that. But I think let's just take David Bell out of the equation and put Terry Francona in it for 2024. And he has to experience everything that they experienced, but he manages the team his way. I think they win 5 more games. That doesn't put them in the playoffs, but that puts them as an 82-win team. It's still, they don't get to the ultimate goal just with what they saw. But I'm saying I think that he makes the decisions in a better way and puts them in a better position. So what does that mean for this year? I think that you can start with an 81, 82 win team And then if this goes right, if that goes right, and we'll lay out what all of those situations are as we get closer to spring training. But if certain situations get closer to the like 99th percentile outcome, as Terry Francona can push it to, we could be talking about a playoff team, but I still feel like they need that one more move to get there.
They do need that one more move to get there. Tito can only do so much. He's not going to hit at all in 2025. Right. And I don't think he's going to play outfield either. So they've got to go get somebody. But, I think it starts at the top and what he has said about accountability and holding players accountable and being just overall smarter in what they do. I think that alludes to things like, letting Ellie run, but choosing his spots better.
Yes.
The baseball of it all, the baseball smarts of it all that Francona is going to bring, I think naturally elevates everybody's game. You get those negative WAR guys out. You get guys back in this lineup that can be super productive. Francona pushes them to be better. Francona gets them to play better and smarter. 5 wins in last year's. Yeah, I think that's right. I agree with you. I agree this team starting off right now is probably a 500 team, maybe, 82 and 80, somewhere in that range. And then the actual performance issues, what Matt McLain's able to do, what Spencer Steer is able to do as far as rebounding. Is CES have a Luke Skywalker hand or not? We don't know. We're going to find out all these things. But if these guys are who we think they are, and they have Tito calling the plays, basically, to use a football analogy, this team is going to be better than that. And now you're talking 85, 86, 87 wins, and that's a playoff team. So for me, I don't think the Tito piece of this is a wild card. I don't think the Tito piece of this is special. The Tito piece of this is what we know. We know guys are going to be held accountable. We know they're going to play smarter baseball. We know he's going to focus on areas of the games where they were lacking, where bonehead defensive plays are going to be eliminated. People forgetting how many outs there are not going to be tolerated. Francona has that impact. So the real wild card is that other 5 games from CES and Matt McLain and Spencer Steer and these guys. That's the question that's got to be answered. And the only way to answer it's to play the games.
Yeah, it feels like the Reds need to be 10 wins better. Because they're 77 and 85. They need to be 87 and 75, whatever the math is for the loss. 87 wins. They need to get to 87 wins to be a while. See, I tried to do math in 2 different ways. And
Alabama, Huntsville South, baby.
Hey, at least you went a different direction there. But anyway, 87 wins is probably the number that you need to get to be a wild card team. If you're talking about the division, you probably need to get to 90. So at that point, you definitely need to add somebody to talk about the division because the Cubs are going to be good. I know that we like to poo-poo some certain things like how do they trade for Kyle Tucker and then take him to arbitration? That seems sort of strange. And their pitching additions aren't necessarily that like impressive to me, but I still think that they're a pretty good team. And Milwaukee is going to Milwaukee, so they're going to be up there. They're going to be good. They're going to be a team that the Reds have to overcome. How do they overcome those odds? They need to do something else, but I feel like Terry Francona, like just a micro example. I was looking at this the other day on Baseball Reference on Ellie's page. Ellie led the majors in steals, and he led the majors in caught stealing. I think with Terry Francona as his manager, he still leads the league in steals, but he doesn't lead the league in caught stealing. Does that seem overly optimistic to you?
That's not overly optimistic. I think that's realistic.
I think that's what Terry Francona brings to the table. I think that the wrinkles in the game for the Reds are going to be ironed out by Terry Francona. It's just how do they continue to support the roster is what's going to determine how far this team can go, because they're not done. They can't be done. But Terry Francona makes it so that they didn't have to go get the top flight free agent pitcher and the top flight free agent hitter to become a good team. Terry Francona kind of covers that up a little bit. I like what they've done. They still need to do more for me to feel good about this. But coming up next, there's something about prospects and the way that we as fans understand them that needs to change. Going to explain what that is coming up next.
If you can't watch us here on YouTube, make sure you take us on the road with you. We can go in the car, we can go to the gym, we can go on a long walk by the river, we can go everywhere because we are on every audio feed podcast out there. And if we're not on one you want, email Jeff, text Jeff. He got you. We'll be there when you need us. All right, Jeff, you want to talk about prospect rankings, and right before we get into that, we haven't talked about this yet, and I want to talk about it for just a second because we find ourselves with a minute or two to burn. And I want to talk about former Cincinnati Red Bubba Thompson going to play a little college football. Going to play a little college football. Jeff, the NCAA is so broken. I don't even know where to go with this. We've got failed baseball, professional baseball players going back to college to play a little football.
Well, I mean, he doesn't have to get on base, so he may be pretty good.
You know, at least he's fast.
But no, he's an athlete, so he's
right?
he's
fast. It's
yeah.
I guess the new rules, you know, once you went pro in anything, you couldn't play amateur, and now since college is not amateur, especially not college football, I guess you can do whatever you want. I don't understand it. Where's Drew Henson?
Right. Is he going to come back and play some more? What was that? Jason White from Oklahoma. Is he going to come back and play a little bit more? Like all of the different things going on there. But no, I do wish him nothing but the best. He seemed like an interesting personality. He just couldn't get on base when he was a Red. He had great range in the outfield, not great decision making. And he was fast when he got on base and came in as a pinch runner, but he wasn't going to get on base. So that was kind of a tough thing there. Yeah, I find that intriguing. You remember when he got sent down? He got sent down from the major league level to the AA level last year.
That's right.
They skipped Louisville. They said, you're going to Chattanooga. They're going to Chattanooga.
Keep on going.
That was tough, but see how that all
right,
goes
Jeff. So to circle this back now to where you wanted to go this segment, hijack over. You have some thoughts on how we rank players, how we rank prospects, and I feel like this has a chance to be very ranty.
It does, and a lot of it has to do, I will admit, with social media. So if you have not seen some of these things, you may be a little bit out of the loop. Quick setup to the rant. It is that people seem to get really bent out of shape over who's ranked what number. Rhett Lauder, top prospect in the Reds organization, according to Baseball America. Chase Burns, top prospect in the Reds organization, according to MLB Pipeline. Who's better? Who's worse? That shouldn't be the issue. 1, 2, 3 shouldn't be a problem. Like if Rhett Lauder is ranked number 3 and you have Chase Betty and Chase Burns ahead of him, does that mean that Rhett Lauder is now going to be a bust? They're not going to get anything out of Rhett Lauder. He's not going to be a good player. No, because CJ Friedel wasn't even in the top 20 whenever he got called up. And quite frankly, we still wonder a little bit about the health issue, but we know when he's on the field, he is a very valuable member of this team. And Rhett Lauder, in the little bit that he showed us last year, showed us that he can be a good member of the starting rotation. When it comes to understanding prospects and understanding rankings, people stop at the number, and we need to change this because there's a lot more to it. If you go on Baseball America, they have like complete scouting reports on guys. There's a complete scouting report on Rhett Lauder where underneath of the ranking number that everybody stops at, they talk about his grade and his risk of reaching or missing that grade. They give him a 55. Now, this is on the scouting scale, 20 to 80, of what a guy could be for his future. They give Rhett Lauder a 55, but his risk is only at a medium. According to Baseball America, most prospects have a high risk of missing their future grade, which is true. I mean, think about how many Reds prospects we've seen come up to the majors and fail. But you have guys that have these certain grades attached to them, and whether their number is high up in the Reds organization or not does not have anything to do with what they could be to the team in the future. Alfredo Duno, case in point, is ranked number 4 in the Reds organization, according to Baseball America. Alfredo Duno can't drink yet. He hasn't hit Chattanooga yet, but he is ranked number 4 in the Reds organization. So does that mean that the Reds can then bank their entire future off of Alfredo Duno? No, you got to look past that. You see his grade is a 60. His future grade is a 60, which is as a solid, major league contributor, everyday contributor, but his risk is extreme because of how much he has to go in his minor league career to even get to the major leagues. There's so much more to understanding prospects. And I feel like we look at trades and there are so many people that are guilty of this. We're guilty of this in the past. I think we've gotten better at understanding this a little bit. But like the Garrett Crochet trade, for instance, when it came to the White Sox and the Red Sox and who the Red Sox gave up, and we looked at their organizational ranking and we said, well, that means that the Reds would have given up this guy because he's ranked the same as this guy. That doesn't mean anything at all. The rankings are for our own understanding, but the numbers attached to their names are just the beginning. You have to look deeper. As Spock once said, logic is the beginning of wisdom, not the end, Steve, not the end.
I swear. Oh my God. No, listen, you were real close right up there till the end. But this is why I continue to say now that if anybody in the Reds organization is up for trade talks. Anybody that hasn't made it to the majors yet is definitely up for trade talks because we just never know. And I know that there are guys that, make their whole living out of evaluating minor league players and talking the minors and projecting and doing all these things. Baseball is crazy, man. More than any other sport, when it comes to drafting and developing talent, you just never know. Ask people about Ellie De La Cruz from 5 years ago. Nobody knew who he was.
Nope.
It's wild to me the way that this sport develops.
$65,000 is a bonus and not the millions that we see other people get.
Correct. So for me, Jeff, I pretty much ignore the rankings. If I'm being honest, I pretty much ignore the rankings. I much more care about how they're performing against their peers at whatever level that they're playing at and how they're progressing. Were they better this year than they were last year? Did they take what was a high K rate in 2023 and reduce it in 2024? What's the trajectory that they're on? And I know that those are the things that like Baseball America takes into account to get you to the numbers and all that. Right. But if you get stuck just on the ranking number, then there's much more to unpack. And I've started to try and look more of those things. If a guy is in single A, if a guy is in rookie ball, I do not care what his ranking is. It makes me never mind. That guy's 6 years away. It doesn't matter to me. And if they want to trade him for somebody that can give me some major league WAR right now, trade him. I don't care.
And what comes with this rant is also a bit of a New Year's resolution as it comes to the podcast, is that when we talk about a prospect, we are going to go deeper than just say, well, he's the number something ranked of that organization. We've done that in the past. I've done that a lot in the past. But we're going to go deeper than that because every website, even Fangraphs, does prospect rankings and they have grades and they have scouting reports on players. We're going to go deeper and look at the scouting report, look at what the bones have to say about this player because everybody's different, like especially with Rhett Lauder. The first thing that they say on the scouting report about Rhett Lauder is it's hard to describe Lauder as a pitcher without seeming to belittle his stuff because the sum of the parts is significantly better than the individual pitch grade. Because if you were to look at his fastball, it's okay. You look at his slider, it's okay. His changeup, it's okay. It's what he does with them. It's how he locates them. It's how he moves them throughout the zone. He knows when to throw them. He knows when to lay off of one pitch and throw a different pitch. He just has this understanding that a lot of other pitchers don't have at his age. And that's what makes him such a great prospect for the Reds. And there's more to him than just, well, he throws X amount of miles an hour on his fastball. And this is why he's ranked number 1. That's not what we're talking about here. We want to get much deeper into the prospect rankings and understanding of what a future value of a player is, because there is so much. And this offseason, Stephen, a quick side rant to this rant, this offseason has been just full of so many side stories that are misinforming people about rumors and this and that and the other, that we've had to sift through them all for you. And we will continue to do that as the offseason goes along, because that's part of what we love to do here on Locked On Reds, is to bring you the stuff that matters and filter out the stuff that doesn't. But I think what I'm trying to say, and what you're trying to say here, is the numbers next to the player's name in a ranking does not matter. The scouting report does. And that's what we're going to get into a lot more this season when we talk about things like prospects.
And that is where we're going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day. Now go make Paul Francis Sullivan, you can call him Sully if you like, over at Locked On MLB. Make him your second listen. He's got you covered for a national perspective on baseball. Great storyteller, lots of baseball history. You will not be disappointed if you listen to one of his shows, and we made it easy for you to do so. Just jump down into today's episode description. There is a link down there to get you to his show. Until next time, when we are in your feeds, we're going to continue to gather up those scouting reports. We're going to gather up that news. We're going to gather up the rumors. We're going to bring all that information back right here to keep you locked on Reds every single day.
You know which Star Trek movie that quote was from, Steve?
Oh, God.
The Undiscovered Country. It's my favorite one.